It's been about 2 years since I last played Lost Judgment, and 2 years later, here I have returned to finally give a more nuanced, more mature review for Lost Judgment. Starting off first, a brief summary of what Lost Judgment is supposed to be. Takeya Kimura reprises his role as Yagami, the main protagonist. Yagami returns to essentially be a extension of the Ginda Law Agency, where he's still not practicing law, he's still being a detective, but he is doing the quote-unquote dirty work. He still has the freedom to go and do some heavy investigation that involves essentially putting his life at risk. However, he is doing it on the behalf of Sayori, whose client is a police officer by the name of Akihiro Ihara. I really hope I am remembering that correctly. If not, sue me. All you're gonna get is like 50 pairs of dirty socks anyway. But Akihiro Ihara is being charged with being the typical pervert in Japan, trying to grope a girl on the subway. However, this man is just a little too eager to go to jail for one of the sniff panties, which has his Yagami and Sayori completely confused as to why he is just adamant about going to jail, only to come and find out that this man is trying to avoid a much harsher punishment. He is trying to avoid the punishment of straight up murder, and the person he murdered is a man who goes by the name of Mikoshiba. Now you're wondering, okay, well, why did this police officer murder somebody and jeopardize his entire life like that, to the point where he would rather be known as a dirty, ugly, crusty, dusty, musty, smelly, old pervert groping women on the train? Well, that is simple. Mikoshiba right here used to be the bully of Ihara's son, Toshiro, or Toshio. But Mikoshiba was essentially his son's bully while they were attending Seiryo High. And unfortunately, Toshio decided to commit suicide. And so Yagami sets out to not only find the truth behind why the hell did Ihara decide to murder Mikoshiba, but he also decides to make sure that justice is being rightfully served to Ihara himself. I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this, that this is gonna be a yapathon in this goddamn video, but more so a yapathon of touching the amount of topics and themes and characters that really makes the story of this game shine and makes me appreciate it more after not initially appreciating it. To start off with, the story in Lost Judgment is the best story that has ever been written within RGG Studio. I don't care whose mama you cry to while resting on her breast like an episode of Ayanla, but this story is bar none the best story that RGG Studio has written to this day. Yes, I am throwing in Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. Yes, I am throwing in Infinite Wealth. Yes, I am throwing in The Man Who Erased His Name. And the reason why I say that it's the best is because there are so many elements within the story that is just not, things are just conveniently connecting together. Like it can sometimes happen within a Yakuza game, where, especially the older ones with Kiryu, where you're just kind of like, really? That was able to happen? Okay. But no, instead, this story is so connected. You know how in the Yakuza games, the story is usually connected because of the fact that these guys are Yakuza members or ex-Yakuza, and they're like kind of having to deal with remnants of the Yakuza. However, with Lost Judgment, because it doesn't have that Yakuza affiliation, the story for this game, it ties into the biggest theme and the overarching theme of Lost Judgment, which is bullying, specifically school bullying. A school is the first exposure you have towards any type of bureaucratic system, a system of checks and balances and influence and power involved. Just as much as the school system is baby's first steps towards dealing with a bureaucratic entity, the school system can also be baby's first steps of being neglected and abused within a bureaucratic system. Bullying is like an activity that is always centered around somebody trying to oppress someone else through power. Bullying is a topic that we all seen, experienced, or even probably heard about. In school bullying especially, it can happen to anybody anywhere in the world. Bullying necessarily doesn't start and end on the playground. Bullying is in the workplace too when you get older. A manager abusing their power, you will never really necessarily escape it. Bullying just morphs and shifts into various forms. The B story features these high-powered government officials is just to emphasize and show that even at the highest seats of power. You can still see people abusing their power and authority in order to get what they want, in order for them to put their individual need over the people that they are put in place to serve. And again, this game manages to do a great job connecting all of these characters to not only just the theme of bullying, but to each other. One character in specific who is essentially, if you ask me, the glue to this story. Without them, this story would not have been as strong as it was. And one of these characters especially, I came around to them. Let's go ahead and talk about Yoko Sawa, aka Sawa Sensei. I hate that bitch's guts. I hate her hair. I hate her skirt. I hate her goddamn Forever 21 sweater that she wears. I hated everything about her. She was incredibly annoying, incredibly hostile to Yagami. Like, the man just wanted to infiltrate the school so that he can do his investigation. And what does Sawa Sensei do? Give him stank attitude, to be specific. He had a hard on for hating Yagami. By proxy, she hated me. And so by proxy, I hated the bitch too. However, there is a scene in the game where Sawa Sensei drops the assholery, she drops the cuntiness, and she begins to get vulnerable about why she became a teacher in the first place. And what makes Sawa Sensei an impressionable character is, despite me not liking her, this is a woman who at once believed that she could make a change in the school system. And she decided, well, if you want to stop bullying within the school system, of course, you naturally become a part of the system so that you can change it from the inside. She witnessed a high school classmate being bullied. She witnessed Ihara's son being bullied and was not only a part of justice not being delivered, but bullied into being quiet, bullied into being complicit in order to not see justice being delivered for Ihara's son. And so naturally, when you are someone who wants to become the change that you want to see, and you enter the very system that you have this rosy tinted glasses of believing can change, to be met with the reality that, oh, there is no changing this system. Like, imagine being a key figure and being able to actually be the change, and yet the very system tells you to stay quiet, and you miss that opportunity. The hostility that she showcases towards Yagami isn't necessarily of her just being a stone cold bitch, but it's more so her lashing out, her dealing with the gripes of not being the one that could have prevented Ihara's son from committing suicide. And I'm pretty sure that Yagami wanting to actually deliver justice is reminding Sawa Sensei of her failure to actually get on the witness stand and tell the truth of what happened with Ihara's son. To join the system in order to change it, only to, at the end of it all, comply with the system. And I believe that is where Sawa Sensei's anger, frustration, cold shoulder, and hostility towards Yagami really derives from. And Sawa Sensei herself is connected to all of these characters. Like, she is the center of the web. For starters, she is the teacher of Ihara's son. She was the fellow classmate of Reiko Kusumoto's son, who is in the hospital himself for attempting suicide due to being bullied. She's connected to Kuwana because Kuwana was both Sawa Sensei and Kusumoto's son's teacher, thus him being connected to Kusumoto. And because she was starting to snoop her nose into too much information regarding Kuwana and Ihara and Kusumoto, the proximity of potentially finding out about government officials having their hand in blackmailing another government official is what leads her to being murdered by the RK gang, which is led by Soma, who is Bando's lapdog, essentially. When she is murdered in the game, I felt that shit deep in my soul. And it wasn't like a, yay, Sawa Sensei is dead. No, this was like me almost coming into tears, crying over Sawa Sensei's death. So while I initially wrote off Sawa Sensei, but yet still had the compassion to not rejoice in her death, like, Sawa Sensei is a damn good character. Another character that I do want to point out has to do with another theme that's also present in the story. I would say that it sort of takes up the third act of the game, with Sawa Sensei's death being a crucial point of the story, is Jin Kuwana. Kuwana. What's interesting about Kuwana is that he is an actual authority figure that did not step in to resolve the bullying. You compare him to Sawa Sensei, seeing that he is someone who was just complacent in the system, upheld the system in neglecting the children's well-being and not wanting to actually, step in and prevent Kusumoto's son from attempting suicide. But the catch with Kuwana is that it eats him away of not doing anything to step in and protect Kusumoto's son, that he did nothing to stop the bullying. Kuwana actually ends up becoming this quote-unquote vigilante who actually goes to the parents themselves and actually helps them murder their children's bully, which means Kuwana is connected to Akihiro Ihara, and he is also connected to Reiko Kusumoto. Connection to Reiko Kusumoto especially is what's really got him in the eyes of Soma and Bando. But what's to note of Kuwana is the fact that he and Yagami, they are both a part of the second major theme, I would say, in this game. Which out of the two, between Yagami and Kuwana, whose justice is better? You have Yagami here, a stickler for the systematic way of delivering justice, and him being constantly pitted against Kuwana, who's, if you want the job done, you got to get your hands dirty yourself. That is what Kuwana embodies. And so to see the final third act where Yagami and Kuwana, they are essentially just butting heads at whose sense of justice is correct, and not necessarily correct for everybody to validate, but more so which one is correct in getting the job done, which one is correct in making sure that justice is served. Because like I said, Sawa Sensei's death is really the catalyst between these two going so hard at each other when it comes to discussing their differences in justice. Yagami keeps reminding Kuwana, you think that you are doing the correct thing, putting justice into your own hands, murdering these bullies. Now she's involved. When you being unable to cover your tracks and you leaving this snail trail that's allowing for people like Bando and Soma to come after people like Sawa Sensei and murder them. And on the other side of the coin, you have Kuwana telling Yagami, you want to say that my sense of justice is incorrect when your way of delivering justice through the legal system is so inept, so corrupt. Kuwana was like, it's not my fault that Sawa Sensei is dead. Sawa Sensei wouldn't have had to die if all these bureaucratic systems in places would actually do their job. If these bureaucratic systems would aid the people that they're supposed to aid. In other words, Sawa Sensei should have never ended up dead had the system done its job in the first place. And seeing these two clash with their differences, it had me on the edge of my seat. And I was getting so invested with how much was escalating as the story was progressing that it got to a point where I stopped caring about doing the mini games. I stopped caring about doing the side quests, and I just kept charging on through the main game. Like, I probably went off to go do side quests if I needed certain bonuses, like a health bonus or attack power increase and all that stuff. A good chunk of the side quests and mini games are heavily rotated around Serio High, and usually in RGG games, the side quests always serve as like a commercial break. Main stories are usually dark, gritty, bloody. You can't help but want to take a break from it at times and just do a side quest where Kiryu is dressed up as Onomichio or Ichiban is at karaoke singing his heart out. And with the case of the Judgment series, the first Judgment game did actually have somewhat wacky side stories that still had a uniquely grounded aspect about them. So to go to Serio High School and do the school club mini games kind of put me off because I was like, I just want to get away from it. But let me say this, I understand why the side quests and the mini games wouldn't be as wacky as they were in the first game, because Lost Judgment is talking about some like seriously heavy shit, not just school bullying but teen suicide. I'm telling y'all, I really needed a break. I was just like, you know what? If I'm gonna have to deal with seeing children and being around this high school, why not just stick to the main story and see it through to the end? Another con that I have with the game is the same con that I have with Judgment 1, and that's the whole extraction system where you have to make these extracts that give you these super duper buffs. I never really cared for the extract system because I just didn't like having to scour all throughout Kamurocho, and then this case, in Lost Judgment, Ijincho and Kamurocho define ingredients and having to level that up and all that jazz. I didn't like it in the first Judgment, and I still don't like it in Lost Judgment. But speaking of the extract system and how it pertains to buffing up stats that you can use while in combat, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the combat system. The other two styles return, Tiger and Crane, if I am not mistaken, but they also add a third style called Snake, and I remember using the Snake style for about 90% of my playthrough. Like, it was really fun being able to juggle enemies, and it felt like at one point I was playing Virtua Fighter. But those are my thoughts on Lost Judgment. If I had to give this game a score, I would give a 8.9. That ends this long needed review of Lost Judgment. Until next time with the next review, stay safe, stay healthy, and beat up your local school bully. Peace.